Today is Friday, September 27th in 2024. We welcome you to our Chapter 49 podcast. Chapter 49 represents most IRS employees in the state of Indiana. My name is Larry Lannan. I'm a volunteer for Chapter 49 and a retiree, and take a little bit of my time each week to do this podcast and a few other items that relate to communications within the realm of Chapter 49. And of course, our chapter president is Duncan Giles. He joins us once again, and welcome again, Duncan.
Thanks, Larry. It's always good to be here.
Well, got a couple of things I was going to mention early on. Number one, as we record this today, Hurricane Helene is not only hitting Florida, parts of Florida has already moved up to Georgia and other states. Even those of us living in central Indiana going to see wind gusts 50 miles an hour and more today as a result of this hurricane, which it's become a tropical storm as it moves inland, but it still packs quite a wallop for those of us who are in its path. So the first thing we want to do is our hearts go out to all the people who are impacted by this. And Duncan, if you're a federal employee and you're impacted by something like a hurricane or a disaster like that, I know NTEU has worked hand in fist with the federal employee program to help people as with an assistance program and things like this hit.
Yeah, we're via the federal employee program that does help folks who've had issues with disasters and things of that nature, federal employees who've had issues with disasters. They do scholarships and things of that nature, but also, things like when this hits, and this is impacting hundreds of thousands of people's lives right now, and will continue to do so, unfortunately, for a little while.
And it's worth noting, we've talked about Project 2025 in the past on this program, how it affects federal employees in other parts of society. If you read that document, if in fact that document were all to become law, first of all, there would be no National Weather Service. There would be no National Hurricane Center. That Project 2025 eliminates all that. Would also eliminate the insurance subsidy program, which allows development along the coastlines. Without that, it's still hard enough to get insurance, but even with the subsidies, but there are federal subsidies which allow people to develop along the coastlines. That program would be gone under Project 2025. And finally, once the hurricane moves through, all the federal help we talk about, there's always federal assistance to these disaster areas. Under Project 2025, read the document, that would all end. Just want to give you an idea what that program would mean for the country were it to be implemented. Also, Duncan, this week we had several people all around the country from NTEU who came to Indianapolis for a meeting. So it was a chance for you to once again see some of your compatriots with the IRS chapters, Customs and Border Protection, and other agencies that are represented by NTEU.
Yeah, it was, they did a training here in Indianapolis. And normally when we have a fall training, it's very agency specific. But our national president, Doreen Greenwald, decided let's make it more non-specific to agencies, the government overall, and open it up for all the governmental agencies that NTEU represents. And we had a good representation. There were approximately 200 people there, I believe, from 18 of the now 45, 46 agencies that NTEU represents. A lot of good discussions among things. And it's always good to hear issues that other governmental agencies are dealing with. When we hear, here at IRS, we've got these issues. You hear about some of the working conditions that folks, let's say, in Customs and Border Protection have to deal with, because they're usually a lot of times at airports and things of that nature. So there's mold on their walls, leaks everywhere, the vermin infestations, because they're in the less desirable places that don't get to that, and it gets to be tough. So they have, everybody's got different challenges, but the goal is to all pull together to work for everybody, and that's something that we should do, as federal government employees, period.
Well, let's get to our issues now. And the big news we've had recent days, a continuing resolution has been agreed to, signed into law. It wasn't exactly clean, and the word clean simply means you're just putting the resolution in to extend the budget. You don't have anything else in there. There were a couple of important items in there. One was a provision that would have prevented federal employees overseas from seeing a 22% cut in their pay. I don't think anybody wanted that. So
Right.
that was included. That needed to be done right away. And also, there was support for the Secret Service. I've talked about this before. I really think the Secret Service has been neglected for a number of years, budget-wise and otherwise. I never thought it recovered once it left the Treasury Department, where it was always a valued part of Treasury. But when it went to Homeland Security, it's kind of, okay, just another agency, sadly. And we've seen what's happened. These agents have been working a tremendous number of hours, and I think all of that has begun to seep into protection of presidents and presidential candidates and former presidents. So we don't want that to happen. So the extra funding for Secret Service is also in that continuing resolution. But the good news is the government stays open. The bad news is it's only through December 20th. So about a month and a half after the election is complete, then we will once again have this debate in Congress. So Duncan, we hope that our elected officials will be able to come to some agreement and get these budgets done, because as our national president, Dorian Greenwald, has said, it's not just keeping the government open, it's getting sufficient funding for these agencies to perform the jobs given to the agencies under the law.
Exactly. It's one of those things where we don't want what we call any unfunded mandates. Congress says, okay, we want you to do this, this, and this. If they don't give us the funds to do this, this, and this, they're not going to get done. That's just the way this works. And so we're always trying to make sure and pushing hard on the Hill to ensure that agencies that we represent specifically get proper funding. And this is, it's just like Groundhog Day every year. Every year they come in January and say, we are going to work on appropriations. We're going to work with the other side. We're going to, properly do this. And every year it's been continuing resolution, kick the can down towards the end of the year, let the deadline go as close to the holidays as possible, and then pass, what they call omnibus bills, where they put a bunch of bills in there, or package it up into a couple of what they call mini buses, not the old VWs, but smaller groups of agencies that they fund together. And it's just not the proper way to run the government, because you don't get the proper funding that way. You don't get the good, honest discussions. And that's what I think is missing a lot in Congress, where people want to talk about their particular points of view, but not what the agencies need to do to run their agency properly. And I think that's a darn shame.
Well, Duncan, I just want to point out that this is why you should always watch or listen to this podcast. You get a new perspective on budgets. Duncan just compared the budget process to a Volkswagen minivan. Think about that for a moment. No, actually, the speaker has said he's adamant that there will be no omnibus bill. Of course, he was adamant about several other things that ended up happening anyway, right?
Exactly. I mean, I would love for them to do appropriations. I would love for each of them to do that. And the House has passed several of them out of committee. And they say, well, we've got our appropriations. I'm sorry, that's political theater what they've passed. It's not honest appropriations. To be honest appropriations, it's got to be something that both the House and the Senate can work with. And if one body is not, going to do something with what the other body has passed, and they know it in advance, it's just political theater. And we don't have time for political theater. The American people, the taxpayers, as well as government employees who do the work every day, counting on paychecks that they get, they want to make sure that they're properly funded, that things will work the way they should, so we can continue to move forward to help the American public and the American taxpayer. But, with so much political theater going on, it makes it virtually impossible to pass appropriations bills. And that's where we end up with the omnibuses or the Volkswagens.
So we hope everything comes together. And as you mentioned, Duncan, the House, Senate, and the president all have very different ideas on what these budget levels should be. The Senate and the president are much closer together than the House is to either one of them. So at the end of the day, there has to be some kind of compromise reached, and we will watch that closely for you. Well, we have some bad news on the health insurance front, and it's not just for federal employees. As a retiree, this impacts me as well because I have an FEHB health insurance program, as many retirees do. A lot of retirees who retire from the federal government. One of the great benefits we get is taking our health insurance into retirement. Well, we've just got the rates for next year, and it's not good news, Duncan. Tell us about that.
Oh, it's not good news. The on average, it's 13.7% higher than this year, and some of them are much, much higher. I took a look at the plan that I'm currently on, and that's increased greatly, probably over a 25 to 30% increase in premiums. And, you just look at this and, what's the reason for this? Well, what they're saying is the insurance companies are telling the Office of Management and Budget, who basically takes these bids, is things like the weight loss drugs that are out there that cost so much. And basically drugs as a whole are costing more and people are using them. So they have to increase the premiums to reflect that. But this is quite a kick. And NTU is really pushing for two things. One is we need to make sure that the cost goes down so that, we can do things like, make sure that there's prescription, bundling almost, so we can get a lower rate on things like prescriptions, so we can push down that amount of insurance, as well as try for a larger raise in 2025 to increase, to dent that increase that's come up in these health insurance premiums, because you're not seeing a lot more covered. It's just a higher premium for the stuff you already have.
And I think also IVF is becoming more popular, and that is an expensive process, and that has been another ingredient. You mentioned a lot of the main ones there when it comes to prescription drugs, and the weight loss prescriptions are very expensive on the whole. So we know that this is an increase that we're all going to have to deal with. Any of us who have health insurance through our job, unless you have it through a spouse or something. Most all federal employees or retirees have their health insurance through the FEHB program. I'm on Medicare, but I still have FEHB as well, which would be right. Not everybody does that, but I think it's a good idea. In my case, everybody has their own individual situation to evaluate there. So I think this might also be a good time to remind people that NTU will be providing some assistance on the employee benefit costs. We're going to have a comparison tool come up. It's not ready yet because we've just received the raw information. It takes a while to distill that and put it into a program. But at some point, our membership will have access to a comparison program to see what might be the best health insurance plan for you if you need to switch. Although, if they're all going up, obviously that's not good news, but perhaps another plan that fits into your doctors and then the health care you need. So I assume that NTEU was already working on that.
Well, yeah, it's, we do the consumer checkbook, which is one of those things where they've got everything broken down that you can take a look, but excuse me for reaching off camera. But the folks from United Benefits, and I'm getting no money for mentioning this, work with NTEU. And they've got several programs that they do. And one of the things that we just learned this week while we were in the training is that they are coming out with a tool that basically you will put all the information in that you have, and they said it gets pretty specific, and that it will basically spit out the best options for you. Literally tell you between, premium cost, catastrophic, prescription drugs, things of that nature, that they're going to be able to assist us with. And I think that's going to be a great boon. And you know what they charge for this service? Zero. And that's one of the good things, about this. I had some conversations. We've had folks on before from there, and we're going to have them when they come to open season again from United Benefits to explain about this tool. But they do a lot of different things, and that's one of the things I wanted to make our members aware of out there is, they do everything. They sell their products. They are an insurance type company, so they do sell some products. Everybody can weigh whether they want them or not, but they also, as a service, because they're contracted with NTEU, is, if you need help in figuring out your retirement, you need help in figuring out your life insurance. Again, what goes back to what health insurance, you can schedule an appointment with these folks for free, and they will assist you. And when I was talking to one of the reps while they were giving the presentation, I was talking to a rep I know very well, and Zach I was asking Zach, I said, okay, in retirement, what do you help employees with? He goes, everything from filling out the stuff on the GRB on down. We do it from A to Z. We help walk you through everything. And I think that's a tremendous benefit because we just don't have the personnel folks anymore to do that. We used to have personnel folks that you could walk down, ask a question to, and be able to do that. But now, with United Benefits assistance, you can have that type of thing. Go to unitedbenefits.com, and they will be able to assist you with all sorts of things. So, and again, as I like to say, this is a non-paid advertisement. I'm getting nothing out of this, but I just want to, I'm just very happy to anything that we can offer our members that's of a great benefit to them. And I truly think this is from United Benefits, that they'll be able to help employees at no cost to the employees.
And it should be noted that NTEU, how should I put this, evaluates companies with which the union partners. I'm sure there are plenty of other companies that have wanted to partner with NTEU on something like this. And the reason, as I understand it, and you're welcome to chime in on this too, is that NTEU at the national level evaluated this. And yes, of course, United Benefits, they have their own plans that if you want to buy them, you can, but they are there also to give you an honest assessment of what you need. So yes, you can buy our products, but you don't have to. We're just going to give you an assessment on what's best for you, which is not necessarily tied to what they're selling. I think that's the important thing. You'll get good, honest, unbiased advice on how to handle all these things. And what I wish I'd had that help at retirement myself. I did not fill out my paperwork exactly correctly. Fortunately, I had some really good people at IRS and it wasn't, couldn't walk down the hall, of course, but they were in another city, and to help me with the mistakes I made on that application, and everything was fine and in good shape when it went to OPM and sailed through there. I mean, it sailed through, but I mean, it took time, but there were no delays because of incorrect filing of forms and that sort of thing. So, again, we're going to have United Benefits on. We've had them on once before, and Duncan said we're going to invite them to come back on again when all these new tools are available, particularly the health insurance tool, which is the checkbooks coming on, and that also. All these things we're talking about, the United Benefits, the checkbook for health insurance, Duncan, we want to point out are member benefits. People who are members of NTEU receive these benefits.
Exactly correct. If you want to get this information, this advice, this help, this is one of the advantages of being a member of the National Treasury Employees Union. We're always trying to add value, and this is one of those things. Now they've come out with, United Benefits is spreading their wings. They're doing also selling a program through Travelers for car and home insurance, and apparently NTU members get discounts with that as well. So there's a whole wealth of things that they do. And you talked about, that NTU looks at these very closely. NTU partners with very, very few different companies or things like this, because they want to make sure that there's a true value there. And we've experienced their growth over the years. I remember when United Benefits first started partnering with NTU, partially, and they offered a few things, but I've seen it as this company has grown more and more and offered more and more things that is of benefit to our members. And again, that's what we're trying to do. If we can find something that helps our employees make their job life easier, protects them and their families, I think that's a wonderful thing, and that we need to do everything we can to make sure that folks know about this.
Well, Duncan, every now and then, you and I may take a point of personal privilege, and you're going to do this now because you want to tell a personal story that could have an impact on a federal employee or two, or maybe more. And it has to do with FEHB, the life insurance company many federal employees use for their health insurance and for their life insurance coverage. There's a difference there. So please, Duncan, tell us your story.
Yeah, my wonderful wife Kim had a stepmother who passed away over a year ago, and had never gotten really anything or any information. The person who's taking care of everything has not really been forthcoming. So she contacted OPM. OPM gave her a package, sent it to her, and I was helping her with it because I do speak governmentese. But there were some questions when it came to the FEHB part. So there was a number to call for FEHB. We contacted it and ended up with someone, a nice lady named April. And April basically took Kim by the hand on the phone and helped her with everything she needed to do, told her what she needed to send, what she didn't need to send. And it was just really great customer service by FEHB. And so I wanted to make sure that, that people understand, if you have questions about these types of programs that you're paying into, or you're a beneficiary, or whatever it might be, call them. Like I said, April from FEHB did a great job, but I know that our folks, whether directly or indirectly, give great service to the American taxpayers, that they're helpful, that they try and give them answers. And so in turn, I'm asking you, or suggesting to you, that if you have questions, reach out to these types of folks. They'll be able to assist you. Hopefully you'll end up with great service like we had, and be able to answer these questions, because a lot of times it can be very confusing. We may know something about how our particular agency works or does things, but in some of these specific, where it comes to health insurance, life insurance, things of that nature, we may not know. Call them. They're the experts, and they want to help and lead you by the hand if necessary to get stuff taken care of. So it's just a really refreshing customer service interaction with something that is federal government affiliated.
And so we shout out to April. April, wherever you are in the FEHB company, you get a shout out from the Chapter 49 podcast. Let's talk about Hatch Act. We'll again promise to have a Hatch Act section on all of our podcasts between now and the election day. There is something in election law, and it's all local. Most elections that I have been familiar with are partisan elections. When you're on the ballot, you're a Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, or another party of some kind. You have a party attached to your candidacy. That is a partisan election. But like in the state of Indiana, we do have nonpartisan elections, but it's only for our school board candidates, and there are very few other examples of that. There are places around the country where local elections are nonpartisan. I know places in states surrounding Indiana, even when my daughter's family lives in South Dakota, where many of their local elections for mayor, city council, so forth, are nonpartisan elections. You vote, you don't have a party attached to it. Now that you may know something about that person being active at a party, but the party name is not on the ballot. That's technically a nonpartisan election. So why do we need to know and define a nonpartisan election when it comes to the Hatch Act?
Yeah, because of the fact where you get into partisan politics, this is where, you're not supposed to be supporting one party or another while you're on federal government time, or God forbid, running in an election for a partisan election, because that could influence how you're viewed as doing your job as a federal employee. When it comes to, as you said, nonpartisan elections where there aren't any political party labels, it is assumed that these types of elections, you don't need to worry about political affiliation or potential folks looking at you going, okay, well, they're doing this because they're Republican or Democrat in their government job. Okay, you're a member of a school board. I think that's, like, you use that example. I think that's one of the best ones to use. That you're running for your local school board, you're running for your local town council. If there's no political affiliation to that, and you can help your community in that way. And a lot of people, again, federal government employees, we're not here to get rich, God knows. So, we're here to try and help the public do what we can. And, some people want to get even more involved in their off time and their personal time. And this is the type of activity that'll let you do that in your community as an elected official, if it's in a nonpartisan race, if it does not have those political labels attached to it.
So bottom line, if you're thinking about running for office and you don't know whether it's a partisan or nonpartisan election, ask your local chapter. They can get that answer for you. If there's any question about whether you're involved in a partisan or nonpartisan election, because the rules are different. So that's our Hatch Act moment for this podcast. And Duncan, time for your final comment.
My final comment is going to be on coming together. Whether it be your work life, whether it be your personal life, we're always going to be stronger coming together. We have much more that we have in common than we do differences. And so whenever possible, come together to, try and push forward what we have in common for the greater good. And that's, you see that relationships that are the strongest are the ones where people are pulled together, whether it be marriages, friends, teams, unions, or just organizations. The more you can pull together and be together towards the one overall purpose, I think it's the best for everybody, for both the collective and the individual, mentally and physically.
My final comment has to do with voting, and I think this is the time as we head toward October, early October. It's time to make a voting plan. A lot of people say that. What's your plan for voting? Early voting and mail-in voting may become. It's already available in some places now. In Indiana, to mail-in vote, you have to get an absentee ballot. You have to fall into a specific category of people. But early voting will begin soon in Indiana. It's when registration ends, voting begins. The rules are very different in all the different states. Sometimes you can register right at the polls, depending on where you live. So it's sometimes easier or more difficult to register just depending on where you live. And if you're not sure whether you're registered, you can go online in any state and find out, is my name correct? Is my address correct? Is my polling place correct? If you are going to go to the polls on election day. So there are ways to do that. And I know in Indiana you can do this. And I think in most, if not all states, you can register online if you are registering before that deadline. So if you want to vote, and I think most people do, especially if you're a federal employee, but even if not, friends or relatives, people who maybe aren't thinking about this, help them out. Make a voting plan to vote early or vote by mail if you can in your state based on those rules. Or again, if it's going to be on election day, just a word of warning. In presidential election years, normally the polls are very busy. So think about a voting plan. If you can mail it in, fine. If you can early vote, fine. If you're going to go on election day, if you're a federal employee, you do have some time you can take away from the job. Duncan and I have talked about that in the past. We'll talk about it more as we get into October. But you do have enough time to vote on election day. If that's the time you choose to or can most easily vote, you will be given time based on the law and the contracts NTEU as a union has negotiated for you. Duncan Giles, thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining us on the Chapter 49 podcast. We try to keep this a weekly podcast to the extent that we can. We may miss one in October, but we'll let you know more about that as time goes on. So once again, I think we want to thank you mostly for taking time out of your busy day or evening or personal time to watch or listen to our podcast. In the meantime, please be safe and be kind.